Hello, it's Tony from Ding, and I'm back with another great thinking tool to help you build awesome learning designs. In this episode, we're looking at reception learning, which was developed by a chap called David Ausubel. Reception learning can be summarised as follows: help learners integrate new information into what they already know. This might sound obvious, but if you ever try to explain anything to a child, you'll understand what I mean. A child has limited ability to absorb and make sense of new information, and as soon as you present them with a concept that's too complex, they will disengage, as I often find with my own children. This is the receive aspect of reception learning. In order to receive new information and incorporate new information into our brain, we have to make sense of it using the language and concepts that we already have. To help you visualize this, I'm going to use the technique of metaphor. Imagine I gave you a delicious bowl of food that you've never tried before, but then asked you to eat it with chopsticks. If you've used chopsticks before, you'll be able to receive and assimilate this food fairly easily into your body because you're familiar with using chopsticks. But if you've never used chopsticks before, you'll probably struggle to eat the food. However, if I then gave you a fork, you would be able to consume the food because you'd be able to use a tool that you already knew how to use. And we can summarize this as follows. We can only make sense of new information by using the tools and concepts we already possess. And in fact, this is why the metaphor is such a great tool for explaining new concepts. For example, if I say something like, the space-time continuum is a bit like folding a piece of paper in half, you'll be able to begin building an understanding of how space-time works because you can visualize a piece of paper being folded in half. Now, the basic premise of reception learning is this: present new information using language, images, and concepts that learners already know and understand. Next, create meaningful connections between learners' prior experiences and the new information. And one way to do this is by using metaphor and using phrases such as, it's a bit like when you get out of bed in the morning, or it's a bit like when you clap your hands. Now, once learners have begun to make sense of the new information, then gradually present more complex concepts until you can see them looking a bit confused, and then link these concepts back to their prior knowledge and experiences, and so on. So, how can learning designers and educators use reception learning? To visualize what reception learning looks like in the classroom or the lecture, I'm going to borrow the steps from the excellent book called Learning Theory Simplified by Bob Bates, which I highly recommend. It's brilliant. To use reception learning, start by reviewing what happened in the previous teaching session, then explain how you're going to build on this experience in the current session, making sure you use simple language and concepts that your learners are familiar with. As you present the new information, make clear links and connections back to what learners covered in the previous session. Next, verify that they've understood the new information using something like a problem-solving activity or a simple recap test. Then summarize what you've covered in the session to help learners consolidate what they've learned, and finally, describe what you're going to cover in the next session. To finish with a metaphor, that is reception learning in a nutshell. If you found this useful, hit subscribe and get more thinking tools in your learning design toolbox.